place right in the heart of Elgin. The wind and rain is making things a bit messy on the expressways this morning. On the inbound Stevenson, right before the Tri-State, there was a crash. It cleared now. Your travel time is 52 minutes from 355 to Lakeshore Drive, outbound 35 minutes. The Edens, 22 minutes, Lake Cook to Montrose, outbound 17. The Kennedy, 49 minutes, O'Hare to downtown, 29 from Montrose, 18 in the Express, outbound 27 at the airport. The Eisenhower, 1 hour, 390 to downtown, 42 minutes from Wolf, outbound downtown to 390, it's 40 minutes. I'm Jim Telemonte. On AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Morning rain continues, considerably cloudy and windy throughout the day, high 42. It's 38 at O'Hare, and we have just had a 38-mile-an-hour wind gust at Midway Airport. Your next news update is at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Is Nipple Rings Gambino preparing the Vincent the Chin Gigante insanity defense? I don't understand. Why is he wearing a blanket?
You got a little blankie, and people are, just destroying him on social media, comparing him to Linus from the Peanuts. He was caught Saturday and Sunday over the weekend wearing a blanket, looking like the victim on his cell phone with Saratoga seltzer water in his right hand, the phone in his left hand, and looking very concerned and just pacing around the governor's mansion because he's acting weird. And yesterday he had a Wednesday phone conference.
Right, because they have social distancing protocols. You can't get within 6 feet of the governor.
No, he
especially
used
if
to,
you're female.
No, I see what you're saying there. But yeah, he used to have, in-person press conferences on a daily basis. Now, since this happened, he had one last Wednesday. He had one yesterday, and nobody focused on the premise of the press conference, which was about vaccine rollout instead.
I wanted to ask specifically about the accusations you faced from Charlotte Bennett. She says that you asked her if she's ever been with an older man. She says you asked her if you practiced monogamy. She says that you yourself said you were open to a relationship with a woman in her 20s.
Ew.
Did any of that happen?
John, as I said,
He's the victim.
the Assembly has a review going on just the questions you asked and questions like it. And I'm going to respect the review, and I won't comment on issues that are subject to the review.
Hey, he's very quiet, very defeated Cuomo.
Well, what? You know whether you did those things or not, so say yes or no.
He won't. And then it got weird. So they had this operator who would queue up the next reporter.
I'm not going to resign, find out the facts, and we'll take it from there. Let's take one more operator.
Your next question comes from the line of Gwyn Hogan from WNYC.
Yeah, little
operator. He's a good old time. I thought maybe he would break in. Well, he couldn't because the operator was a woman, but maybe to break into a little new edition Mr. Telephone Man.
I mean, it was bizarre. That was the only time there was any levity to yesterday's press conference, phone conference, whatever that was.
Well, President Biden sat down with Clinton Foundation donor Zero, as we know, and covered a range of topics, including Andrew Cuomo. And this is what Creepshow Joe had to say about Nipple Rings Gambino.
How about right now? You've said you want the investigation to continue. You saw Chuck Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, majority of the congressional delegation don't think he can be an effective governor. Right now, can he serve effectively?
That's a judgment for them to make about their state where they can be effective. Here's my position. It's been my position since I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. A woman should be presumed to telling the truth and should not be scapegoated and become victimized by her coming forward, number one. But there should be an investigation to determine whether what she says is true. That's what's going on now.
And you've been very clear. If the
I
investigation
say-
confirms the claims, he's gone.
That's what I think happens. And by the way, it may very well be that there could be a criminal prosecution that is attached to it. I just don't know. But let the investigate. And I don't know what it is. But I start with the presumption. It takes a lot of courage for a woman to come forward. So the presumption is it should be taken seriously.
Sure.
And it should be investigated.
Absolutely.
And that's what's underway now.
Absolutely. And so then the follow-up, never to come from Stephanopoulos, of course. The follow-up is then you would support an investigation into Tara Reade's allegations against you, and we should presume that she's telling the truth, right, Mr. President?
Oh, George, he would step on a land grenade before he'd ask that question.
For more on all of this interesting developments and whether or not we should be rooting for Handsy Andy to survive or rooting for his imminent his demise as soon as possible. Pleased to be joined by Professor Nicholas Waddy. He's an associate professor of history at SUNY Alfred, and he has opined on the topic in the Spectator, in amgreatness.com. Keep on keeping on, Governor. Professor Waddy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
So you don't want, first, I mean, just the standard that President Biden has set forward, the presumption of belief. We start talking about presumptions in a legal context, even in a normative legal context. Usually the presumption is against for the accused in our free society, but that seems to be a bit confused with respect to Democrats here.
Yeah, I'm outraged that President Biden would say that. I mean, he's really overturning a key principle of American justice, that you're innocent until proven guilty. He's saying that if a woman accuses a man of something, the man is presumptively guilty and has to prove his innocence. And that puts not only Governor Cuomo, but all of us in a very difficult situation. I think we all know that eventually the truth will probably come out that some of what Cuomo is accused of is true, some of it is false, and some of it can't be proven either way. And so there's not going to be any clear resolution to this case in that sense. And not everything that he's accused of is sexual harassment or is criminal either. So, but anyway, to construct a standard that a man is presumptively guilty before you even know any of the facts is absurd.
I mean, except in the case of Biden, of course, he is exempt from that standard. But you go on to suggest that not only should due process norms be enforced with the Cuomo investigations, but also there's a very political reason, from your perspective, why you'd like to see Cuomo hold on as long as possible.
Yeah, well, I'm a conservative and I'm a Republican, and the truth is that the GOP is on life support in the state of New York, and we need a train wreck of a governor like Andrew Cuomo to breathe new life into the party and to give us an outside chance to win in 2022. And the truth is that the people of New York chose Andrew Cuomo. He was a terrible choice. He's a terrible governor. He's a terrible man. But we should have to live with that choice unless he has, committed the equivalent of high crimes and misdemeanors and merits removal from office. So I'd like to see Republicans have a fair shot at winning the governor's mansion in 2022.
Well, but speaking of the high crimes and misdemeanors, I mean, do you think anything will come out of the nursing home fiasco where, changing numbers, covering up, sending infected people back to group homes and nursing homes?
That's a great question, because I think a lot of people regard that as the more serious crime here, or potential crime. I think some of us are a little skeptical and considering the possibility that perhaps there's some misdirection here. I think if Democrats, both in New York and nationally, had to deal with this nursing home issue, a lot of Democratic governors would be on the hot seat, and their political futures could be in jeopardy by destroying Cuomo on the issue, the rather nebulous issue of sexual harassment. Democrats might be able to avoid the nursing home issue, and they really shouldn't get a pass on that.
Right. It's not just nursing homes, but group homes, too, as we know and as we've discussed on this show. And you're right. The longer he's around, the more that issue is prominent, and the more people say, well, what, Governor Whitmer, what exactly did you do on this front? Pritzker, Murphy, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to go back to something with respect to New York Republicans, and that a wounded Cuomo presents a political opportunity. Maybe, but we know something about this in Illinois when it comes to incorrigible electorates. I mean, Spitzer, Weiner, Cuomo. It doesn't seem like New Yorkers so much care about boorish behavior on behalf of their governors or high-profile elected officials.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the other consideration is that Cuomo has a year and a half to recover before he has to potentially run for re-election in November 2022. So I think, quite honestly, it is still more likely that Cuomo will be re-elected than that we will have a Republican governor in the state of New York. Having said that, a wounded Cuomo at least gives Republicans and conservatives a fighting chance, whereas all things being equal, they wouldn't have one. So
yeah, it's nice to have an albatross, right?
Right, exactly.
He is Nicholas Waddy, Associate Professor of History at SUNY Alfred. He blogs at Waddy, Waddy, waddyisright.com. Professor Waddy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
I struggled with symptoms like frequent gas and stomach pain for years.
I was bloated all the time with daily diarrhea.
At first, I thought it was what I was eating.
I kept thinking it was stomach issues.
So I did my research and talked to my doctor, and we finally uncovered the truth.
It was actually EPI. Exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI, is a condition where your pancreas is unable to help break down your food.
It can lead to symptoms like diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, unexplained weight loss, and oily stools.
And EPI symptoms can be confused with those of other common digestive conditions, like irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's, and celiac disease.
So getting to the right diagnosis meant being more open with my doctor about the severity of my symptoms and how often they were happening.
But there's good news. EPI is manageable, so don't wait any longer. Use the symptom checker at identifyepi.com and schedule a visit or call with your doctor to ask, could I have EPI?
Sponsored by AbbVie.
All right. For years, you've heard the familiar name of Turnkey IT. They've told their success stories and provide